1. The donkey and the horse. There was a donkey walking alongside a horse who looked very sleek and fancy. The horse only had a simple saddlebag, while the donkey was overloaded with heavy goods to the point that it couldn't bear the weight. The donkey begged the horse to share some of the burden, or else it feared it would collapse before reaching the city. It said, "Please help me with half of this load. It would be nothing for you, just a minor inconvenience." The horse refused outright, even snorting in the donkey's face. Unable to take the weight any longer, the donkey fell down. After that, the horse had to carry all the goods, plus the donkey's skin as well. 2. Overcoming adversity. We, who have lived in concentration camps, still remember those few individuals who would walk from tent to tent, offering comfort and sharing their last pieces of bread. They were only a handful among many in the camps, but they stood as powerful proof that even when stripped of everything, there remains one thing that can't be taken away: the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way of life. 3. The donkey and the mule. The donkey and the mule were traveling together, each carrying an equal load. The donkey complained that, despite having the same burden, the mule got twice the amount of food. The mule remained silent. After a while, the donkey became tired. The owner took some of the load from the donkey and shifted it to the mule. The mule didn't complain and kept going. Further down the road, the donkey was even more exhausted. The owner transferred more load to the mule. Now, the donkey had almost no goods on its back and trudged behind, panting. At this point, the mule turned to the donkey and said, "Dear friend, I guess I do deserve twice the food, don't I? Therefore, we should judge people's work not by how they start, but by how they finish." 4. The monkey and the guest. To celebrate a big holiday, one day the monkey invited all his friends over to his place. The black turtle also came. First, the monkey offered his greetings and then invited everyone to the feast. They all ate and drank to their heart's content, loudly clinking glasses and grabbing meat. The black turtle couldn't get onto the chair and asked the monkey for help. The monkey looked at the turtle and laughed mockingly. "Ha ha, ha! Whose fault is it that your legs are so short?" The black turtle was really upset, left hungry, and vowed to find a way to get even. The opportunity came. On another holiday, the black turtle invited all his friends, including the monkey, for a meal. Once the food and drinks were laid out and everyone was seated, the black turtle said a few words and announced the start of the feast. Then he went over to the monkey, looked at his hands, and said, "I'm sorry, but your hands are too dirty. It's really unhygienic to eat like this. Please go wash your hands first." The monkey's hands were naturally black and looked dirty, but washing wouldn't change that. The monkey hurried to find a rag and some water to wash, but no matter what, his hands remained black. He asked the black turtle what to do. The turtle laughed loudly. "Ha, ha! Whose fault is it that your hands are so black?" The monkey immediately remembered how he had treated the turtle before and realized the turtle was getting back at him. He couldn't even get angry and just sneaked away. 5. The bear, the lion, and the fox. A young deer died from eating poisonous plants. The lion and the bear saw the deer's body and started fighting over the meal. They were so busy fighting that they didn't notice the fox sneaking up. Taking advantage of the lion and the bear being distracted, the fox dragged the deer into the bushes for a big feast, but then died from the poison after eating. After fighting for a while, the lion and the bear couldn't find the deer anymore. They stopped fighting and went to look for it, only to find the fox dead from the poisoned meat. The lion and the bear then said to each other, "Serves the cunning and greedy fox right. Thanks to it, we were saved from dying." 6. 2 roosters. There were 2 roosters born to the same hen and raised together. As they grew up with full feathers and wings, they became two strong roosters, often arguing with each other. Each thought he was more beautiful and majestic, claiming the right to be the king of the farm. One day, after an argument, they fought fiercely, deciding that the winner would be the king of the farm. In the end, one naturally won and the other lost. The victorious rooster quickly jumped onto the fence, flapped his wings, and crowed loudly, celebrating his win. Unfortunately, his crowing caught the attention of a hawk flying by. The hawk swooped down, grabbed the winning rooster, and took him away. Meanwhile, the defeated rooster lay there, barely breathing. We should love and protect our siblings at home, so outsiders cannot take advantage of us. Proverb: be wise in dealing with strangers. Roosters from the same hen should not peck at each other. 7. The mountain bird. When the spring brush began to bloom, the mountain bird quickly realized the danger lurking for the feathered species. It gathered the birds and made its case. It's best to chop down the oak where the spring brush grows. If we can't manage that, we should fly to humans and ask them not to use the spring brush for hunting birds. However, the other birds didn't listen and mocked it. The mountain bird then flew to the humans to make its plea. Thanks to its cleverness, humans agreed to let it live among them. As a result, while other birds were caught and eaten by humans, only the mountain bird was allowed to take refuge with humans and was permitted to build its nest peacefully in their homes. This fable illustrates that those who can foresee events can easily avoid dangerous situations. 8. The wild boar and the rabbit. There was a wild boar eating at night in a sweet potato field when it got trapped. One of its hind legs was caught and hung off the ground by a snare, and the more it struggled, the tighter the snare became. It was almost dawn. Suddenly, in a fit of anger, the wild boar bit off its trapped hind leg and limped quickly into the forest. A rabbit, seeing the boar with a bloody, missing leg, asked about what happened. The rabbit praised the boar for being so brave. The wild boar replied, "There's nothing brave about it. If I had stayed, I would have been killed. Losing a leg but getting back to the forest is better, isn't it?" 9. PACO, come back home. In a small town in Spain, there was a man named Jorge who had a big argument with his son Paco. The next day, he found Paco's bed empty. The boy had run away from home. Overcoming feelings of regret and remorse for what had happened, Jorge took a hard look at himself and realized that his son meant everything to him. Wanting to start over, Jorge went to a well-known store in the town center and put up a big sign that read, "Paco, please come back home. Dad loves you. Meet me here tomorrow morning, okay?" The next morning, when Jorge arrived at the store, he found not just one, but 7 boys named Paco who had run away from home, all waiting there. Each of them responded to the loving call, hoping it was their own father inviting them back into his open arms. 10. The clever cat. There was a cat watching some plump fish in a water bowl in front of the house, but it couldn't figure out how to catch them. Suddenly, a mouse came along the edge of the bowl looking into the water. Forgetting about the fish, the cat quickly grabbed the mouse, intending to eat it fresh. The mouse, terrified, cried out, "Don't kill me so fast. Let me help you catch a fatty, delicious fish, much better than mouse meat." Hearing about fish, the cat decided to let go but kept a close eye on the mouse. The mouse carefully moved to the side of the bowl and dipped its tail into the water, wiggling it around. Thinking the tail was a worm, a fish bit it, and the mouse quickly flicked its tail, flinging the fish onto the land. Just then, someone shouted, "A mouse stealing fish!" The cat immediately grabbed the mouse again, biting its neck. Meanwhile, the homeowner, who had just caught the fish to put back in the bowl, loudly praised, "What a skilled house cat we have. Without it, the mouse would have eaten all the fish." 11. happy to help. After running around the forest and feeling tired, the deer wanted to take a short break. He lay down on the grass and asked the rabbit, "Could you please wake me up in half an hour?" The rabbit was thrilled to be asked. It was not just any small task. "Just go to sleep, go to sleep. I'll make sure to wake you up on time," the rabbit promised. The deer stretched out and closed his eyes. "Should I put some grass under you to make it more comfortable?" the rabbit offered, pulling some grass to put under the deer. "Thanks, but no need," the deer said, sounding sleepy. "What do you mean, no need? It's more comfortable on the grass." All right. I'm getting sleepy. "How about I get you something to drink before you sleep? There's a stream nearby. I can be back in a flash." "It's okay, really. I'm very sleepy." "Then just sleep. Go to sleep. Do you want me to tell you a myth? It might help you sleep better." The rabbit kept insisting. "All right, thank you. I can sleep like this." "Or is it your antlers that are making it hard for you to sleep?" Hearing this, the deer got up and ran off. "Where are you going?" the rabbit asked, surprised. "It hasn't even been 20 minutes yet." 12. 3 in the morning, 4 at night. In the state of Song, there was a man who loved raising monkeys, so people called him Monkey Lord. He kept a whole troop of monkeys and knew the personality of each one, and the monkeys understood what their master said. Every day he allocated a certain amount of food to feed his monkeys. After a while, his house ran low on food, so he thought about reducing the monkeys' food ration but was worried they wouldn't listen. So he came up with a plan to deceive them. He gathered all the monkeys and said, "From now on, you'll eat rubber seeds instead of your usual food, 3 seeds each in the morning and 4 seeds each at night. Is that enough to fill you up?" The monkeys were all unhappy and complained it was too little. After a bit, he asked again, "How about this? From now on, you eat rubber seeds instead of your usual food, 4 seeds each in the morning and 3 seeds each at night. That should be enough to fill you up, right?" Hearing this, all the monkeys lay down on the ground, showing they were very pleased with the arrangement. 13. The Owl and the Two Kings. Once, the eagle was king and loved listening to the birds play flutes. On the music festival day, the eagle had 1,000 birds play flutes together. Among them was the owl who couldn't play, but he still blended in to get the food the king provided. When the eagle stepped down, the phoenix became the new king. This new king also enjoyed flute music, but he wanted to hear each flute individually. The owl, realizing he would soon be discovered, asked to leave the band. The crane, who was the conductor, asked, "Why leave when things are going well?" The owl replied, "It's easy to rely on others when working together, but who can you rely on when you're on your own?" 14. Lost Hammer. There was a guy who worked as a woodcutter and lost his hammer. He suspected the kid next door had stolen it. So every move the kid made, he thought looked like the actions of a thief. When he saw the kid's facial expressions, he thought those were the expressions of a thief. Hearing the kid talk, he believed even his voice sounded like that of a thief. Every little thing the kid did seemed to him like the actions of someone who had stolen his hammer. Then one day, he went up the mountain and found his hammer where he had left it on a mound of earth. After that, he no longer saw the kid's gestures and actions as those of a thief. The experiment. There was a parrot who, after learning a few human words, became very proud and arrogant. He declared, "I can speak human. From now on, you'll never hear me speak a bird word again." "Oh, wow!" exclaimed the female parakeets. "So smart! He only speaks human now. He looks down on bird language." "He can speak human?" asked the old crow. "So what? That doesn't make him smarter than the rest of us. I can speak human too, but I've never considered myself a philosopher." Then talk to him. Talk to him in human, the parakeets urged. We bet he won't talk back to you in bird. You'll see. Let's give it a try, said the crow, hopping over to the branch where the parrot sat looking self-important. Hello, Mr. Parrot, the crow greeted, introducing himself in very fluent human. I'm a crow. The parrot is an idiot. The parrot is an idiot. The parrot responded with equal formality in human. The parrot is an idiot. Did you hear that? The parakeets admired. He made you believe, right? He speaks all in human. You believe him now, right? Yes, I believe. And I must say, he's absolutely right. 15. A simple act of kindness. One day, while walking home from school, Mark saw a fellow student ahead of him trip and spill all his belongings, including books, 2 sweaters, a baseball bat, a pair of gloves, and a small tape recorder. Mark bent down to help him pick everything up. During their walk, Mark learned the boy's name was Bill, who enjoyed playing video games, baseball, and loved history. Bill shared that he was struggling with a few subjects and had just broken up with his girlfriend. Mark continued on his way home after dropping Bill off at his house. Later, Mark and Bill saw each other at school, had lunch together a couple of times, and eventually graduated from high school. Throughout their high school years, they kept in touch. Finally, their last year of high school arrived. 3 weeks before graduation, Bill asked Mark to meet up for a chat. Bill reminded Mark of the day they first met. Did you ever wonder why I was carrying so much stuff home that day? Bill asked. I had cleared out my locker because I didn't want to leave a mess for someone else. Earlier, I had stolen some sleeping pills from my mom, and that day I was planning to take my own life. But talking and laughing with you made me realize I would regret missing out on that moment and possibly many more great times ahead. You see, Mark, on that day when you helped me pick up my books, you did much more than that. You saved my life. Anyone can be great. All it takes is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. 16. I wanted to butt heads. There was this little goat with the tiniest horns you've ever seen, but he was always stirring things up. He didn't really know what else to do, so he kept picking fights with everyone. I want to butt heads. Come on, let's have a go at it. Leave me alone, said Mr. Western Rooster, stepping aside with dignity. Come on, let's have a go. The goat went on to pester a little pig. Back off, the piglet replied, kicking up some dirt with his hind leg. The goat then ran over to an old sheep. Come on, let's butt heads just for fun. Go away, the sheep pleaded. Leave me be. I'm not going to stoop to butting heads with you. But I want to. Come on, let's just do it for fun. The sheep didn't respond and quietly moved away. Then the goat spotted a little dog. Ha! Let's see how you handle a headbutt. Let's do this! The puppy eagerly rushed in and bit the goat's leg hard. Ouch! That hurt! The goat cried. I just wanted to butt heads. Why'd you do that? Well, I wanted to bite, the puppy retorted and gave the goat another painful bite. 17. What hardships leave behind. The quickest way to get through tough times is to go straight through them. A young man facing many difficulties, feeling hurt and losing faith in life, went to seek advice from a wise old man. After listening, the old man didn't say a word. He silently placed a pot on the stove, filled it with water, and added a carrot, a cube of salt, and an egg. After boiling them, he lifted the lid and quietly looked at the young man. Then he began to speak. Everyone faces challenges and difficulties in life, but what matters is what happens afterward. Look at the cube of salt, solid on the outside, but it dissolves in water. The carrot, tough and firm, becomes soft after being heated, and the egg, fragile at first, becomes harder after being boiled in hot water.
Hey everyone, Your comments truly matter, offering insights and motivation to others and uplifting our creative team at Lighthouse of Wisdom channel. Sharing your thoughts and experiences enriches our community. So, let's get the conversation started below and help illuminate our path with your wisdom.
18. Lessons from the Farmyard, the Curious Chick, and the Wise Rooster. One day, Little Chick kept clinging to Big Rooster, bombarding him with questions. Why does Miss Heron have a long beak and tall legs, while mine are so tiny? Back off! Why does Mr. Rabbit have those long ears and I don't even have the smallest bit of an ear? Stop bothering me! Why does Kitty Cat have such beautiful fur and I only have a few scrappy feathers? Enough! Why can Mr. Puppy wag his tail and I don't have any tail at all? Quiet. Why does Baby Goat have horns and I don't even have the tiniest horn? Enough! Back off! Big Rooster lost his temper. Always back off, back off. Why do adults answer kids' questions but you don't? Little Chick complained. Because you're not asking, you're just jealous. Big Rooster replied sternly. And that was the plain truth. 19. The Donkey and the Seal. There was a beautiful tree right in the middle of a field. Mr. Donkey was running across the field, looking around so much that he ran right into it and saw stars. Mr. Donkey was really mad. He went to the riverbank and called out to Mr. Seal. Hey, Seal, do you know there's a tree growing in the middle of the field? Of course I know. Then you should go cut it down. You have sharp teeth, don't you? Why would I do that? I just bumped into it and now my face is all swollen. It's such a nuisance. Where were you looking? 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 I was just glancing around and look what happened. Go cut down that tree already. But cutting it down would be such a pity. It beautifies the whole field. But it gets in the way of where I'm going. Cut it down, please. I don't want to. Is it too much trouble? It's not that it's too much trouble, but I won't do it. Why not? Because if I cut down that tree, you'll just run into the stump. Then dig up the stump too. If I dig up the stump, you'll end up falling into the hole and hurt your leg. Why would that happen? Because you're a donkey. 20. Beauty. Bear and Wolf were having a deep conversation about everything under the sun. Nearby, a butterfly was fluttering around. She danced from one tree to another. Seeing the butterfly, Bear watched her closely. Look at that, Bear said to Wolf. Isn't it marvelous? Where? Wolf asked. Right there, on the branch just above your head. A butterfly. Such beauty in her form. Beauty in that butterfly? Wolf scoffed. You don't find her beautiful? Bear was surprised. What's so great about that butterfly? No need to explain, Bear countered. Look at her. How gracefully she moves. The patterns on her wings are so beautiful. Truly wonderful. Graceful? Patterns? I don't see anything special. But there's no but. Not long ago I saw a chubby little lamb. Oh, all that meat, Wolf said, his eyes lighting up. Now that is what I call beautiful. Ah, Bear sighed, feeling disillusioned. I think I understand you now. 21. The Fake Priest. Once upon a time there was a wolf in the forest who was both fierce and sly. One day it heard that a young boy in the nearby village was sick, and it devised a wicked plan to eat the boy. It disguised itself as a priest, wearing a pink holy hat, draped in a white holy robe, sporting yellow holy shoes, with a string of beads around its neck, and a holy book tucked under its left arm, walking with the aid of a stick. The wolf then made its way to the village. Upon entering the village, the wolf loudly recited prayers, attracting the villagers' attention. The sick boy's parents were overjoyed to see the priest and immediately invited him over, offering chicken and goat in hospitality, pleading with him to heal their son. After a hearty meal, the wolf pretended to pray, flipping through the holy book. After a while, it approached the sick boy, examined him from head to toe, and declared, "The boy is gravely ill. Only I, the most skilled priest in this area, can cure him. You're lucky to have found me. Now, quickly sacrifice 2 cows as an offering so I can pray for the boy's recovery." By the time the cows were prepared, it was already dark. The wolf told the boy's parents, "Rest assured and go to sleep. I will watch over your son tonight." The next morning, the parents rushed to their son's room, only to find the door ajar. The priest and the cows were gone, leaving behind only bloodstains and bones on the bed. Realizing they had been deceived, the parents wept bitterly. Their cries moved the neighbors, who came to console them and plotted revenge for the boy. They decided to ask the rabbit for help. After hearing the story, the rabbit said, "You've been tricked by a cruel forest wolf, not a priest. But don't worry, I'll bring him to justice." The rabbit then disguised itself as a priest, complete with a pink holy hat, a white holy robe, yellow holy shoes, a string of beads, a holy book, and a walking stick, riding on a large rooster. Arriving at the wolf's den, the rabbit instructed the rooster to hide while it recited prayers loudly. The wolf, hearing the prayers, rushed out and warmly invited the rabbit inside. After a lavish meal, the wolf said, "It's an honor to have you, though I apologize for the lack of preparation." The rabbit tasted the food and remarked, "It's a bit bland." "I'll get some more salt," the wolf replied sincerely and headed to the kitchen. The rabbit followed into the kitchen, and as the wolf reached for the salt, jumped forward, pushing the wolf into the sack, quickly tying it up and shouting for the rooster's help. The rooster rushed in, securing the sack with a rope. The wolf threatened, "Release me, or I'll devour you." But the rabbit and the rooster ignored him, carrying the sack back to the village. The villagers gathered, each taking turns to hit, kick, and punish the wolf. In no time, the wolf met its end. The story reminds us, you cannot judge a person's character by their appearance alone. 22. The Deer in the Cow Barn, a Cautionary Tale. A deer found itself wandering in the woods and accidentally strayed into a village bustling with people. Suddenly, a hunting dog noticed it and started barking loudly, charging towards the deer. Terrified, the deer turned and ran. In a panic, it ended up in the yard of a farmer's house. With nowhere else to hide, the deer pleaded with the cows in the barn, "Please, you have to help me. Let me hide among you." One kind-hearted cow said, "Oh, you poor thing! Why did you come here? Hiding here is like walking into a trap." The deer responded, "Just let me stay here and I might have a chance to escape." Eventually, the barking of the hunting dog faded away, but the deer didn't leave. Late in the afternoon, the herdsman came to feed the livestock but didn't notice the deer. The steward and the servants also passed by the barn without spotting the deer inside. Relieved, the deer thanked the cows for their help. A cow warned it, "You better leave now. Even if we want to protect you, there might be times we can't. There's still one more person who will come by the barn. He's very thorough. If he doesn't find you, then you're truly safe." Right then, that person walked into the barn, complaining about the poor quality of the fodder, while he moved around the hay, grumbling, "What kind of operation is this with just a handful of hay? The hay in the barn is too sparse. They don't even clean the spider webs properly." As the owner walked back and forth inspecting everything, he spotted the deer's antlers poking out from the hay, called for help, and captured the deer to be slaughtered. Moral of the story: don't get too comfortable in a moment of relief and forget about the dangers that are still close by. 23. The Box of Love. There's a story about a man who was scolding his 3-year-old daughter for wasting gold wrapping paper. Money was tight, and he became infuriated when the little girl used the paper to decorate a box for a Christmas tree. Nevertheless, the next morning, she brought the box to her father and said, "This is for you, Daddy." The man felt embarrassed for overreacting but became angry again when he found the box was empty. He said to her, "Don't you know, when you give someone a present, there's supposed to be something inside it?" The little girl looked up at him with tears in her eyes and cried, "Oh, Daddy, it's not empty. I blew kisses into the box. All for you, Daddy." The father was crushed. He put his arms around his little girl and he begged for her forgiveness. Sadly, the little girl passed away not long after. The father kept that gold-wrapped box by his bed for years. Whenever he felt down or faced challenges, he would open the box and take out an imaginary kiss, reminded of the love of the child who had put it there. 24. A lesson from trying hard. That's the lesson my 10-year-old daughter Sarah, who always has to wear a leg brace due to a birth defect, taught me. One beautiful spring day, she came home from school and immediately told me about participating in the sports day events at her school. Thinking about Sarah's legs, I was ready with some comforting words to keep her spirits up. But before I could say anything, Sarah excitedly said, "Dad, I won 2 races." I couldn't believe it. And then Sarah added, "I had an advantage over the others, Dad." I see. I imagine Sarah must have been allowed to start ahead of the other kids, or something like that. But then, once again, she surprised me by saying, "No, Dad, I didn't start ahead. My advantage is that I always know I have to try really hard." 25. The Merchant and His Donkey. A merchant had to frequently travel to the city to buy goods, which he would then load onto his donkey to carry back home. The donkey thought himself very clever, always trying to figure out ways to lighten his load. One time, the merchant bought a load of salt. He tied it tightly and placed it on the donkey's back, then walked behind, urging the donkey to move faster. After a while, they came to a small river. The merchant encouraged the donkey to wade through the water. The donkey slipped and fell into the water. The river water soaked the salt, causing much of it to dissolve. When the donkey got up, he realized that the load of salt was now much lighter, which pleased him greatly. From that experience, every time they crossed the river, the donkey would pretend to slip and fall to lose some of the load in the river. The merchant caught on to this trick and decided to teach the donkey a lesson. He went into the city and bought a load of cotton, which he loaded onto the donkey. Once again, they approached the small river. Seeing the river, the donkey was delighted and didn't hesitate to step into the water. Midway through, the donkey pretended to slip and fall again, thinking, "When I get up, the load will surely be much lighter." But as soon as he stood up, he was surprised to find the load was much heavier than before. The cotton had absorbed the water and become much heavier. The donkey hadn't expected the load of cotton to be so heavy and had to proceed without any complaints, head bowed. Moral of the story: when doing anything, we shouldn't rigidly stick to past experiences, but rather look at the current situation and adapt accordingly, choosing the most suitable approach. 26. The Bear and 2 Men. 2 men were walking together when suddenly a bear appeared on the road. One quickly climbed a tree and hid among the dense branches. The other, realizing he was about to be attacked, lay down on the ground. As the bear came close and sniffed all around him with its nose, he held his breath and pretended to be dead. The bear walked away because it's often said that bears won't touch a dead body. After the bear had left, the man in the tree climbed down and jokingly asked his friend, "What did the bear whisper in your ear?" His friend solemnly replied, "It gave me a piece of advice. Never travel with someone who will abandon you in times of danger." 27. The House Dog and the Wolf. Under the moonlight, a hungry wolf was sniffing around looking for food when it came across a very majestic-looking house dog. The wolf said, "Hey friend, with muscles like yours, you must be eating some really good stuff, right? Why do I have to live with so little?" The proud house dog replied, "If you want to live the high life like me, just follow me. I guarantee you'll have a comfortable life." "That would be great." The wolf eagerly asked, "So, what's the catch?" The house dog said confidently, "It's really nothing. Just guard the house from thieves, that's all." "Oh, that's it? No problem at all." The wolf continued, "Living in the forest, I've had to deal with rain and wind every day. I've had enough. If I could just lounge on a bed without worrying about hunger, I'd do anything." "Then it's settled. Follow me," the house dog told the wolf. On their way, the wolf suddenly noticed a large scar on the house dog's back and was very surprised, so it asked with concern, "What happened here?" "It's nothing, just a minor wound or maybe a callus from the collar," the house dog dismissed. "A collar?" The wolf was astonished. "Do you mean to say you're actually not free?" "Not exactly," the house dog said. "During the day, my owner might chain me up, but I assure you, I'm completely free at night. Plus, they all love me. The owner gives me his leftovers, and the servants feed me too." "Goodbye, my friend," said the wolf. "You continue to enjoy your perfect life. As for me, even if it means going hungry, I don't want to tie the iron chain of a comfortable life around my neck." Moral of the story: it's not worth it to give up freedom for a moment of comfort. 28. Traps. Have you ever wondered how the Inuit hunted wolves in the icy, freezing Arctic? It's a question that has puzzled many. The Inuit would take very sharp knives and dip them in animal blood, then leave them outside to freeze. They repeated this process several times, building up layers of frozen blood until the blade was completely hidden. At night, they would stick the knife handle into the snow. Wolves, attracted by the scent of the blood, would come and start licking the blood ice. As they licked more passionately, driven by their craving, eventually the ice would melt away, exposing the blade. Unaware, the wolves would cut their tongues on the blade and, thinking it was the blood of prey, would lick even more fervently. This vicious cycle continued until they bled to death. The next morning, the Inuit would find the wolves dead next to the knives. The exterior of a trap is always appealing and enticing. Invest in your mind. No one can steal that from you. Materially rich individuals may still be poorer than those rich in knowledge. 29. The war horse and the donkey. A war horse, ready for battle with a splendidly jingling harness on its back, was galloping down the road, its hoofbeats thundering like lightning. A poor old donkey, burdened with a heavy load on its back, was also making its way slowly on the same road. The war horse said, "Move aside for me, or I'll trample you into the dust right now." The frightened donkey hurriedly moved out of the way, letting the proud horse gallop past. Not long after, the horse was injured, losing an eye. No longer fit for military service, its fancy harness was removed, and it was sold to a farmer. The farmer made it carry heavy loads, just like the donkey. Eventually, the old donkey met the horse again and recognized it immediately. The donkey exclaimed, "Ah, ha! Is that really you?" Pride and arrogance in the end often lead to a fall. 30. The white ferret. The white ferret admired a handsome young man and begged the god of love to turn it into a beautiful woman. The god transformed it into a charming lady. Upon seeing her, the young man was smitten and took her home. While they were in the room, the god of love wanted to test if love could change its true nature, so he released a mouse in the room. Forgetting its human form, the white ferret immediately caught and tore the mouse apart. Angered, the god turned it back into its original form. Some individuals, despite changing their appearance, cannot change their true nature. 31. What does adoption mean? First grade teacher Debbie Moon was discussing a family drawing with her students. In the picture, one boy's hair color was completely different from that of the other family members. A student pointed out that the boy must be adopted, and Jocelyn J. spoke up. "I know a lot about being adopted because I'm adopted too." "So, what does being adopted mean?" another student asked. "Being adopted means instead of you being born from your mom's belly, you were grown and raised in your mom's heart," Jocelyn proudly answered. 32. The story of the Magnificent Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge, spanning the river between Manhattan and Brooklyn, is considered a marvel of engineering. In 1883, an imaginative engineer named John Roebling was fascinated by the idea of building this spectacular bridge. However, road and bridge experts told him to forget it because it was an impossible project. Undeterred, he convinced his son Washington, also a talented engineer, to join him. Together, they nurtured the idea of how to complete the bridge and overcome any obstacles. By all means, they persuaded banks to finance their dream project. Excited and passionate, they hired workers and began building the bridge they had dreamed of. Just a few months into the project, disaster struck. An accident at the construction site took John Roebling's life, and his son Washington suffered severe brain injuries, leaving him unable to walk or talk. Everyone thought the project would ultimately fall apart since only the Roeblings truly understood how to build the bridge. Despite his inability to walk or talk, Washington Roebling's mind remained sharp. One day, lying in the hospital, he came up with a way to create a communication code. The only movement he could make was a twitch of one finger. With this code, he used his moving finger to convey his thoughts to his wife, who then communicated them to the engineers continuing the bridge's construction. For 13 years, Washington gave commands with the only moving finger he had until the magnificent Brooklyn Bridge was completed. 33. Not a single person left out. Chad is a quiet, shy kid. One day, after coming home from school, he told his mom he wanted to make Valentine's cards for everyone in his class. His mom's heart sank, secretly wishing he wouldn't do that. She had seen the other kids laughing and chatting as they left school, but Chad was never among them. Still, she decided to help him. She bought paper, glue, and colored pencils. Every night, Chad worked hard to make sure he had 35 cards ready. On Valentine's Day, Chad was excited. He carefully packed all the cards in his bag and skipped to school. His mom decided to bake his favorite cookies and serve them with a glass of milk when he came home, expecting him to be disappointed. She felt sad thinking Chad might not get many cards, maybe none at all. By noon, everything was ready. Hearing the kids outside, she rushed to the window. The kids were still laughing and having fun, and as usual, Chad was walking behind them alone. But today, he walked faster. His mom thought he might burst into tears the moment he stepped inside. She saw his empty hands, not a single card, and held back her tears as the door swung open. "I've got cookies and milk for you," she said, trying to sound cheerful. But Chad hardly noticed. He came in, his face beaming, saying, "Not a single person was left out. Not a single person." His mom's heart sank. Then he continued, "I gave a card to every single one of them, Mom. I didn't forget anyone." 34. Giving leads to receiving. When I was hosting a radio show in Columbus, Ohio, I often stopped by a local hospital on my way home. I'd go into patients' rooms to read the Bible to them or just chat. It was a great way for me to forget my troubles and give thanks to God. What I did made a big difference to the patients I visited, and one time it even saved my life. I got home at 2 a.m. one night. As I opened the door, a man stepped out from the side of my house and asked, "Are you Leigh Brown?" "Yes, that's me," I replied. "I'm here about a deal concerning you," he said. "Concerning me? Why?" A sponsor is really mad about losing money because you announced that the band coming to town wasn't the real deal. So, what are you going to do to me? I asked. Nothing, the man hurried to explain. I'll tell you why. My mom is getting treatment at Grant Hospital. She told me how you visited her, talked with her, and read the Bible to her. She was so touched that someone from the radio who didn't even know her would come to see her. She wrote me about you while I was in jail in Ohio. I was really impressed by what you did and wanted to meet you. When I heard someone wanted to harm you, I told them all about you, about my mom's thoughts, and about the patients at the hospital. After hearing it, they agreed to drop the whole thing and leave you alone. 35. Red Hat Angel. Sitting alone in a coffee shop, I was really scared. Tomorrow I have to undergo a spine surgery. There's a high chance of risks, but I still tried to hold on to my faith. God, please send me an angel to help me get through tomorrow, I whispered a fervent prayer. As I looked up to leave, I noticed an elderly woman slowly making her way to the cash register. Standing next to her, I silently admired her fashionable dress with elegant red and purple flower designs, her scarf, brooch, and the striking red-violet hat. "Excuse me, ma'am, you truly are a beautiful woman," I blurted out. She held my hand warmly and said, "My dear, I thank you so much. I have a prosthetic arm and my other arm is in a brace. This leg of mine isn't real either. It takes me quite a while to get dressed. I always do my best, but it's become second nature over time. You've really made my day. May God always watch over you and bless you." Watching her leave, I suddenly felt lighter. She truly was an angel sent by God to me. With faith, you can see even the invisible. 36. The most important part of the body. My mom used to ask, "What's the most important part of the body?" When I was young, I thought sound was crucial to humans, so I said the ears were the most important part. Mom shook her head. "That's not it. Many people in the world are deaf, dear, but keep thinking about it, and I'll ask you again later." A few years later, I thought sight must be the most important, so I guessed it was the eyes. Mom looked at me tenderly and said, "You're learning a lot, but that's not the right answer because many people are blind." Time and again, her response was the same. "Not quite right, but you're getting closer, my love." Last year, my grandfather passed away. Everyone cried out of love and loss for him. Even my dad cried. It was only the second time I'd ever seen him cry. When it was time for me and Mom to say our final goodbyes to him, Mom looked at me and whispered, "Have you figured out the answer yet?" I was shocked she would bring that up now. I thought it was just a game between us. Seeing the surprise on my face, she said, "My son, the most important part of your body is your shoulder." I asked, "Because it holds up my head?" Mom shook her head. "No, because it's where your loved ones can lean on when they cry. Everyone needs a shoulder to lean on in life. I hope you have many friends and receive lots of love, so whenever you cry, you have a shoulder to lean on." From then on, I realized the most important part of a person isn't something self-serving, but the part that offers empathy and support to others in their pain. 37. The Parrot and the Grasshoppers. Koala was the name of a parrot with a beautiful and agile beak. It could naturally peck at grasshoppers hidden in the grass. Finding these green insects sweet and delicious, after every hearty meal it would stash the leftovers in a reserve. Before long, the grasshoppers refused to accept their fate. They wanted their freedom too. So, they rose up in protest. To fight against their enemy, they secretly formed a grasshopper alliance and devised a specific plan of action. One day, after flying around for a long time without catching any grasshoppers, Koala had to return home hungry. The next day was the same, and the parrot had to resort to its food reserve. For several days after, Koala had no luck. The food in the reserve dwindled until there was only one grasshopper leg left. Koala wanted to save it, but couldn't resist because it was too hungry to sleep. If I don't eat, I can't sleep, it thought to itself. Finally, it ate the last grasshopper leg. But what was one leg? Its stomach rumbled all night. Early the next morning, due to hunger, it was very weak, feeling exhausted whether walking or flying. It had to rest under a tree. Suddenly, Koala heard a strange noise. Buchichi, guachichi, buchichi, guachichi. It thought it might be its stomach rumbling, deciding to sleep it off, hoping to forget the hunger. Buchichi, guachichi, buchichi, guachichi. The strange noise persisted, becoming increasingly annoying. Koala wanted to move elsewhere, but everything around seemed to darken. Oh, why can't I see anything? This must be my stomach screaming in protest because it's been so long since I've had anything to eat. At that moment, Koala saw what seemed like a large cloud approaching. As it got closer, Koala realized the cloud was actually a swarm of creatures. Irritated, the swarm came closer, some hitting, some kicking, some pushing, some biting, causing Koala both pain and itchiness beyond endurance. Ah, heavens, it's a swarm of grasshoppers, Koala exclaimed in surprise. Indeed, the dense swarm of grasshoppers surrounded Koala, making it clumsy and scared. To escape, Koala had to jump from one spot to another, from branch to branch, until it was completely exhausted and finally fell from the tree with a thud. The Grasshopper Alliance had planned it all. So what was the strange noise Koala heard? It turns out grasshoppers can both kick and fly at the same time. Because they all did it together, their saw-like legs made the noise boo-chi-chi-qua-chi-chi. They wanted to intimidate their enemy first. The grasshoppers were truly formidable. Thinking Koala was dead after it lay motionless, the grasshopper army dispersed. In reality, Koala had just fainted. A few hours later, the cool evening breeze woke it up. At first, it thought it was all a nightmare. All was quiet around, and Koala felt even more dejected, wondering why it was so unlucky today. Feeling thirsty, it dragged itself to a nearby stream. The moonlight reflecting on the water looked like a shimmering silver mirror. Koala looked at its reflection in the water, startled and hardly recognizing itself with a bruised face and ugly appearance. Those grasshoppers are terrifying, Koala thought to itself. But don't I have a beautiful and agile beak? Didn't I used to peck at grasshoppers quite naturally? Why couldn't I do it just now? From then on, whenever Koala encountered grasshoppers, it dared not peck at them. When hungry, it would forage for some blades of grass or peck at soft fruits instead. What does this story teach us? That the weak must unite to overcome the strong. 38. The Rabbit Group. In a deep, cool, and peaceful forest, there lived a group of rabbits. Every time a leaf fell to the ground making a rustling sound or a squirrel hopped around causing a young branch to break, the rabbits would startle and shiver with fear. They were very timid. One day, a strong wind blew through the trees, making a terrifying roar, and the branches swayed violently. This frightened the rabbits so much that they all panicked and tried to run as fast as they could out of the forest, their home. They said to each other, "How sad our situation is. We can never relax and eat in peace, always sleeping in fear, startled by a shadow of a tree, our hearts pounding as if they'll jump out at the sound of a falling leaf. It's better to die than live like this. Let's go to that lake over there and drown ourselves." But when they got to the lake, there were lots of frogs playing there. As soon as the frogs heard the rabbits' footsteps, they jumped into the water. The timid rabbits startled at the splash of water. But when they saw the frogs diving deep into the bottom of the lake, an old wise rabbit said, Hold on. Let's think this over. These creatures are even more scared than we are. They're even afraid of us. Maybe things aren't as bad as we thought. Perhaps we've been foolish as these frogs, always afraid even when there's no real danger. Let's enjoy living on our own land and try to be braver. So, the rabbits went back to their forest. 39. Stealing the temple bell. During the Tang dynasty, Tong Van was appointed as the governor of Suzhou. He was known for his integrity and uprightness, but favored Confucianism over Buddhism. Upon arriving in Suzhou, he heard about the renowned monk from Han San Temple, but was skeptical. Tong Van reasoned that anyone could chant scriptures and ring bells. He argued that a monk without power or soldiers who wasn't kind would have to be cruel, and if he appeared kind, it was only to receive offerings, otherwise he would have to beg. So, Tong Van decided to test him. Tong Van ordered a thief from prison, skilled in stealing, to steal the bell from Han San Temple and bring it to him, providing a cart for the task. With the head monk away and the temple empty, the thief easily stole the bell and brought it to the governor's residence. When the monk returned and learned about the theft from the devotees, who urged him to report it to the authorities to catch the thief, he calmly asked, "Why report it?" They replied that the audacious thief had to be punished, suggesting that his descendants would suffer in hell for his deeds. The monk gently said, "If someone is desperate, they might even steal from a governor, not just a temple. Stealing the bell doesn't mean his descendants did. It's unfortunate." "But what about the missing bell?" they asked. The monk smiled and said, "The bell is not the Buddha, a bodhisattva, or an arhat. It's just a tool to tell time or gather monks. Without it, we can use something else. At least the thief had some understanding." This frustrated the devotees, who asked why the thief chose the temple if he had some understanding. The monk explained, he knew the temple, being a place of compassion, would forgive him. Elsewhere, he would have been reported and punished by the authorities. That's what sets a temple apart. If we seek revenge or demand the bell back, we are no longer a temple. The devotees understood, thanked the monk, and left. The monk then ordered the use of a wooden fish instrument to tell time instead of the bell. When Tong Van heard about the monk's reaction, he was shocked and ashamed. He quickly changed clothes, went to the temple to apologize, returned the bell, sought forgiveness, and received a Buddhist name. Afterward, Tong Van personally funded and encouraged donations from the wealthy in Suzhou to cast a new, larger bell weighing 2 tons for the temple. It's said that later, the sound of the Han San Temple bell inspired Zhang Ke to finish his famous poem, The Night of Farewell, at Fengqiao Bridge. 40. Think about it. In 1889, Rudyard Kipling, a Nobel Prize-winning author in 1907, received a rejection letter from the San Francisco Examiner that said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Kipling, but you just don't know how to use the English language." Winston Churchill failed his 6th grade exams. He became the Prime Minister of the UK at 62 after a lifetime of failures. His greatest contributions came after he retired. Albert Einstein didn't speak until he was 4 and didn't read until he was 7. His teacher once said, "He is mentally slow, unsociable, and forever lost in foolish dreams." He was expelled from school and was refused admittance to the Zurich Polytechnic School. Louis Pasteur was only an average student, ranked 15th out of 22 students in chemistry. General Douglas MacArthur was rejected from West Point not once, but twice. On his 3rd try, he was accepted and went on to achieve significant military success. In 1944, Emmeline Snively, the director of the Blue Book Modeling Agency, told aspiring model Norma Jean Baker, Marilyn Monroe, "You'd better learn to be a secretary or get married." Decca Recording Company rejected the British rock band The Beatles, saying, "We don't like their sound. Guitar groups are on the way out." In 1954, Jimmy Denny, manager of the Grand Ole Opry, fired Elvis Presley after one performance, telling him, "You ain't going nowhere, son. You ought to go back to driving a truck." When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone in 1876, it was not immediately embraced. President Rutherford Hayes said, "That's an amazing invention, but who would ever want to use one?" Before inventing the light bulb, Thomas Edison conducted over 2,000 experiments. A young reporter asked him how it felt to fail so many times. He said, "I never once failed at making a light bulb. I just found 2,000 ways not to make one." After losing most of his hearing, German composer Ludwig van Beethoven was completely deaf by the age of 46. Despite this, he composed some of his greatest musical masterpieces, including 5 symphonies, in the last years of his life. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. 41. A miscalculation. Once upon a time, there was a lazy wolf who never bothered to clean or repair his house. It was dirty, shabby, and looked like it could collapse at any moment. One day, an elephant passed by and accidentally nudged the house, causing the roof to fall in. "I'm sorry, my friend," the elephant said to the wolf. "I'll fix it right away." The elephant was skilled and knowledgeable, unafraid of hard work. He immediately grabbed a hammer and nails and repaired the wolf's roof, making it even sturdier than before. "Ha! He must be scared of me," thought the wolf. "He apologized and even fixed my roof. I should make him build me a new house. He's scared, so he'll have to do it." "Hey, stop!" the wolf shouted at the elephant. "What do you think you're doing? You think you can just walk away that easily after knocking down my house? Just hammering in a few nails and thinking you can leave? If you know what's good for you, you'll build me a new house, you beast, or I'll teach you a lesson and you'll never see your family and friends again. Hurry up." The elephant didn't respond. Instead, he quietly picked up the wolf, threw him into a dirty water pit, and then flattened the wolf's house. "Here's your new house," said the elephant and walked away. Waking up, the wolf was baffled. "I don't understand at all." He seemed scared at first and apologized sincerely, but then he did this. "It's beyond me." "You're so foolish," said an old crow who had seen everything. "You failed to see the difference between a coward and someone who is well-mannered." 42. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you rich?" 2 little kids, huddled in an oversized tattered coat, stood close together behind the door, shivering as they asked me, "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like to buy some old newspapers?" I was busy and just wanted to decline quickly, but looking down at their tiny soaked sandals, I couldn't bear it. Their feet were wet from the snow. "Come in, I'll make you each a hot cocoa." They followed me silently. Their wet sandals were placed on the fireplace to dry. The hot cocoa and toast with jam might warm their hearts from the freezing cold outside. After feeding the kids, I went back to the kitchen to continue wrestling with my budget. The quiet in the living room felt odd. I peeked in. The little girl holding her empty cup was gazing at it with such fascination. The boy hesitantly asked, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you rich?" "Rich? Oh no, not me," I sighed, looking at my worn tablecloth. The girl carefully placed her cup on the saucer. "Your cups match the plates so well." She sounded envious. Then they left, wrapping themselves against the biting wind, old newspapers in hand. They didn't say thank you, but they didn't need to. What they gave me was more than thanks. My plain green ceramic cups and plates were just ordinary, but they matched so well. I tasted my potato dish and stirred the soup pot. The potatoes, the soup, the house, even my husband with his steady job, all suited me perfectly. I moved the chair back in front of the fireplace and tidied up the room. The mud from their wet sandals was still on the hearth, but I didn't clean it. I wanted to keep it as a reminder just in case I forget how rich I truly am. 43. The Courage of the Heart. I sat quietly on an old, creaky chair in the auditorium, my video camera still buzzing on my shoulder, feeling tears roll down my cheeks. My 6-year-old daughter was on stage, calm, confident, focused, singing her heart out. I felt anxious, restless, moved, trying to hold back tears that were ready to flow. Listen closely. Can you hear the sounds of heartbeats in the world around us? She sang. Her beautiful face looked up into the lights. Her round, familiar face so unlike my thin one. Her eyes met the audience with all the belief in the world. She knew everyone loved her. Those eyes were nothing like mine. Over the valleys, below the plains, everywhere in the world, the heartbeat is the same. Her birth mother's face turned towards me from the stage. Those eyes, once filled with trust when they looked into mine, now glanced over the audience. My daughter inherited those eyes from her birth mother, slightly upturned at the corners, with small, round, rosy cheeks I couldn't stop kissing. Whether the skin is white or black, sun-kissed or pale, it's the heart of humanity. Oh, the heart keeps beating, beating. She finished her performance. The audience erupted, and so did I. Then applause broke out crisp and clear, and they stood up as if to show Melanie they loved her song. She smiled, she knew, and I cried. I felt so lucky to be her mother. She brought me so much joy that my heart swelled with happiness. The heart of humanity. The heart of courage showed us the way when we were lost. The heart that brought strangers closer. It was the heart Melanie's birth mother showed me. She heard her mother's voice deep within her heart. The brave heart of a 16-year-old girl who chose to give Melanie life out of unconditional love. A woman who thought she could give her child something no one else could, a better life than hers. Our hearts beat as one as I hugged Melanie and told her how wonderfully she performed. She shook my arm and looked up, asking, "Why are you crying?" I told her, "Because I'm so proud of you. You were amazing today." I felt I was touching the strings of love, holding her not just with my sturdy arms and love, but also sending all the endless love of her birth mother, the beautiful and brave woman who gave birth to my little girl and trusted me to take care of her child. I was loving with the love of both mothers, the birth mother's brave love to share, and the adoptive mother's love filling previously empty arms with love, and our hearts shared the same beat. 44. Tommy's essay. In just a short while, both of Tommy's parents, who have recently separated, are going to attend a parent-teacher conference about Tommy's falling grades and disruptive behavior. What they don't know is that they were both invited at the same time. Tommy, their only son, used to be a cheerful, well-behaved boy and an excellent student. Now, I don't know how to tell Tommy's parents that his recent poor performance is a reaction to the pain he's feeling from their separation and impending divorce. Tommy's mom walks into the room and sits down in a chair I've placed near my desk. Then Tommy's dad arrives. They deliberately ignore each other. As I hand them Tommy's detailed behavior and academic report, I secretly hope to find a way to bring them closer and make them realize the impact their actions have had on their son. But for some reason, I find myself unable to speak. Maybe one of the sloppy, tear-stained papers Tommy wrote could help them understand. I find the crumpled, tear-soaked paper in Tommy's desk drawer. The words are scribbled all over, repeated on both sides of the paper. I carefully smooth out the paper and hand it to Tommy's mom. She reads it and passes it to her husband without a word. Tommy's dad frowns, but then his face softens. Time seems to stand still as he silently reads and rereads his son's scribbled words. Finally, He carefully folds the paper, reaches out, and takes his wife's hand. She wipes the tears from her eyes and smiles at him. My eyes well up with tears too, but it seems nobody notices. I was shown a way to bring Tommy's family back together. It was that tear-stained piece of paper filled with words from the heart of a troubled boy. Dear Dad, dear Mom, I love you both. I love you both. I love you both. 45. A lesson to remember. Big Bear always bullied Little Rabbit. Without any good reason, he would grab Rabbit and slap him until one of Rabbit's ears bent down. Rabbit felt miserable and cried for a long time. Even when his ear stopped hurting and his tears dried, the pain lingered. What should he do? Why did he keep running into Bear over and over again? He had never faced such trouble before. But who could help him? Bear was the strongest in the forest. Wolf and Fox were his close friends and often sided with Bear. Who can help me? Rabbit lamented. I can, someone shouted. Rabbit looked with his left eye and saw Mosquito. How can you help me? Rabbit asked. You can't take on Bear. He's too big and you're so small. You don't have the strength. Just wait and see, Mosquito said. Bear had been roaming the hot forest all day. Tired and sleepy, he lay down in a patch of raspberry bushes to rest. But just as he closed his eyes, he heard a buzzing by his ear. Bzzz. Bear knew it was Mosquito. He held his breath, waiting for Mosquito to land on his nose. Mosquito circled around and finally landed right on Bear's nose tip. Bear swatted his left hand at his nose so hard that he taught himself a lesson. Bear rolled over to his right side and closed his eyes, but just as he started to snore, he heard that familiar buzzing again. Bzzz. That Mosquito should have left by now. Bear held his breath, pretending to be deeply asleep, all the while listening for Mosquito to find another place to land. Mosquito kept buzzing and buzzing, then suddenly stopped. Finally, free of that nuisance, Bear thought to himself, and stretched out. But then, Mosquito quietly landed on Bear's ear and crawled inside. Mosquito gave Bear a terribly painful bite. Bear jumped up, swatting his right ear so hard he saw stars. Surely that would take care of that pesky Mosquito for good. Bear scratched his ear and settled down. Now he could finally sleep. But just as he was about to drift off, he heard the familiar buzz. This is unbearable. Bear groaned, got up, and ran from the spot where Mosquito had trapped him. He tripped and stumbled through bushes, yawning and struggling to stay awake. And still, Mosquito was right there. Buzz. Bear kept running until he was out of breath and collapsed under a bush. He lay there gasping, straining his ears for Mosquito. The forest was silent and pitch dark. All the birds and animals were sleeping soundly. Only Bear tossed and turned, nearly fainting from exhaustion. This is misery, Bear muttered to himself. That darn Mosquito has caused me so much trouble I can't even remember my own name. Lucky me for escaping. Now, at last, I can get some sleep. Bear found a large oak bush, closed his eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. He began to dream of being in the forest, about to reach into a honeybee nest. Just then, he heard a familiar sound. Bzzz. Mosquito had found Bear and woke him up again. Bear sat up moaning. Meanwhile, Mosquito continued to fly around his head, coming close and then flying away, buzzing louder and then softer, until suddenly Mosquito stopped. Had Mosquito finally disappeared? Bear waited a moment, then crawled out into a bush, closed his eyes. Finally. Just as he was nodding off, Mosquito started singing "Biz" again. Bear crawled out of the bush and began to cry. "What do you want, you pest? I hope you die. Just wait. I won't try to sleep anymore. I'll catch you. Just you watch." Mosquito made Bear dance until the sun came up. It completely wore Bear out. He didn't rest at all that night. He had beaten himself black and blue trying to catch that sneaky mosquito, but to no avail. The sun rose. Birds and animals woke up after a good night's sleep, chirping and singing happily. Only Bear wasn't feeling cheerful at the start of the new day. Rabbit met Bear at the edge of the forest that morning. Bear staggered, stumbled, and wobbled, unable to even open his eyes from sheer sleepiness. Rabbit laughed until he almost burst. "Thanks, Mosquito," Rabbit happily said upon seeing Mosquito. "Did you see that bear?" "Of course," Rabbit replied, then burst into laughter again. "You see, I'm not as small and weak as everyone thinks, am I?" Mosquito said, and flew away humming its buzz song. 46. Greed. Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Thailand, there was a very large and beautiful temple, led by a young but notoriously greedy and selfish monk. It's unclear how he ended up in charge of the temple given his lack of virtue. In the temple's courtyard, there was an apple tree that bore fruit so large, each was half the size of an adult's fist and incredibly sweet. When the fruits ripened, the monk allowed only himself to pick them, thinking solely of his own desires. Even the other monks were forbidden from touching them. In the area, 2 farmers heard about the monk's greed and decided to trick him to teach him a lesson. One of them approached the temple to meet the greedy monk and asked for some apples. The monk replied, "No, these apples are for me alone. No one else is allowed to pick them." Despite the farmer's pleas, the monk refused. Eventually, the farmer said, "You misunderstand. I'm inviting you to my home this afternoon for some venison. I wanted some apples to roast with the meat." "Why didn't you say so from the beginning?" the monk exclaimed, looking around to see if anyone was watching, and then continued, "Go ahead. Pick as many as you need." The monk's demeanor brightened, no longer sullen as before. Seeing his plan working, the farmer smiled smugly. Then the monk led the farmer to the apple tree, and they picked a bag full together. While picking, the monk inquired eagerly about the upcoming venison meal, and the farmer kept praising his roasted venison. After filling a bag with apples, the farmer took his leave, promising to meet again in the evening. A while later, another farmer came asking for apples and was refused just like the first one. The monk thought, "Why should I give him anything? The first one at least invited me for venison, but giving to this one would be a loss without any gain." So he shook his head, refusing steadfastly. Aware of the monk's tactic, the second farmer said, "I came to invite you for a chicken dinner, and I was hoping to get some apples to stew with the chicken. It will be just us, so don't hesitate." Hearing this, the monk was overjoyed, imagining a feast of venison and chicken for the day. Unaware of the trap set by the 2 men, the monk asked eagerly, "What do you think, or do you not like my chicken?" "Not at all. I'm delighted to accept your invitation. And where is your home?" "Just at the end of this village," replied the farmer. Though the monk appeared cheerful, he was already picturing a plump chicken on his plate, steaming hot. And of course, he invited the farmer to the courtyard and allowed him to freely pick from the apple tree, which was known to be off limits. After filling a bag with apples, the second farmer bid the monk farewell, leaving the young monks in the temple surprised. They had never seen their monk allow anyone to take so many apples before. In the evening, the 2 farmers went to the temple to invite the monk for the feast. They met the monk, and as planned, one of them said, "Now, monk, come to my house first, it's nearby." The second objected, "No, come to my place first, my family is waiting." Neither yielding, they argued noisily, forcing the monk to intervene. All right, I'll go with both of you." The farmers winked at each other and led the monk around in circles. After a while, the monk, exhausted, asked, "Have we arrived yet? Why are we still walking?" "We're almost there, just a bit further," both farmers reassured him. "Yet, At this point, the monk still didn't realize he was being tricked. By evening, they reached a village, and after a short walk to a crossroad, one of them pulled the monk down a path saying, "Here we are at my house. Please come in first. We'll feast and then go to the other's house." The other refused to accept this, running over and saying, "That's not acceptable. I invited you to my place first." They continued to argue, and the monk, not knowing whom to follow first, remained silent. Tired of the quarrel, each grabbed one of the monk's arms and pulled towards themselves. They argued and insulted each other until the monk could no longer bear it and exclaimed, "Leave me be! I won't go to either of your houses. Let me go." At this, they finally released the monk. Now utterly exhausted, not having eaten anything and having endured their quarreling all afternoon, the monk left without a word, visibly tired and disappointed for missing out on a good meal, still unaware that he had been fooled. After the monk left, the two farmers looked at each other and smiled triumphantly. As for the monk, not only did he lose a significant amount of apples, but he also missed out on any feast. Indeed, greed leads to downfall. 47. Is the earth moving for you? 11-year-old Angela suffered from a severe nervous system disorder. She couldn't walk, and doctors didn't hold much hope for her recovery. But Angela never lost heart. Even from her hospital bed, she promised everyone that she would walk again one day. Angela was moved to a special rehabilitation center in San Francisco. The therapists there were amazed by her spirit. They taught her to use visualization techniques, imagining herself walking. Even if it didn't work, at least it would give her hope and positive thoughts during her long days in bed. Angela put all her effort into each physical therapy session. Still, she remained in bed, imagining walking step by step. One day, as she was imagining walking on her own 2 feet, something miraculous seemed to happen. The bed moved. It began to shift around the room. She screamed, "Look what I'm doing! I can move! I've moved!" Of course, at that special moment, everyone in the hospital was screaming and scrambling for cover. Glass shattered, and objects fell. It was an earthquake. But let's not tell Angela that. She believes she made that miracle happen. Just a few years later, she was back in school, walking on her own 2 feet. No crutches, no wheelchair. I wonder if those who experienced the earthquake between San Francisco and Oakland could overcome a minor illness too. The simple mystery of happiness. We often think life will get better after we finish school, get a stable job, or start a family. But once we achieve these, we're consumed by more worries and dissatisfaction when life isn't as we hoped. How many of us realize the happiest moments are now? Life is full of challenges, difficulties, and adversity. The best way to cope is to accept reality and believe in ourselves. In any situation, we must find and create our own happiness. Don't wait for a miracle or someone else to bring you happiness. Don't wait until you're free, graduate, make money, succeed, start a family, or retire to find happiness. Don't wait for spring, summer, fall, or winter to feel happy. Don't wait for the morning sun or the evening sunset to feel happy. Don't wait for Saturdays, weekends, holidays, birthdays, or any special day to find happiness. Why not now? Happiness is a journey, a path. Cherish every precious moment along the way. Spend time caring for others, and remember, time waits for no one. But it's never too late. Time is your best friend, for everyone. Embrace life with all its simplicity and purity, as if you've never experienced pain or despair. As if you've just discovered yourself, the true meaning of love, and most importantly, the simple mystery of happiness. 48. Let's put him in the red outfit. My job involves caring for children who have the virus that causes AIDS. The connections I've made with these special kids are truly priceless to me. I'd like to share with you a story about the bravery of a boy named Tyler. Tyler was born with HIV, passed on from his mother. From the time he was an infant, his life depended on numerous medications. Sometimes he even needed help breathing with oxygen. But Tyler never let this deadly disease beat him. We often saw him playing or running around the yard, carrying a heavy backpack full of medicines and dragging an oxygen tank behind him. Tyler's childlike joy gave him strength and amazed all of us who knew him, making us see it as nothing short of a miracle. Tyler's mom noticed how fast he would run, so she dressed him in red. That way, whenever she looked out the window to watch Tyler playing in the yard, she could easily spot him. Sadly, the terrible disease eventually overcame Tyler, a boy full of determination. He began to weaken, and tragically, his mother was also deteriorating. When Tyler's time seemed short, his mother talked with him, comforting him by saying she was also close to passing and would soon be with him in heaven. A few days before he passed, Tyler gestured for me to come closer to his bed and whispered, "I'm going to die soon, but I'm not afraid. When I die, please dress me in red. Mom promised she'd come to heaven with me. Maybe when she arrives, I'll be playing with friends and I want her to recognize me right away." 49. Never give up. Years ago, while excavating an ancient Egyptian tomb, an archaeologist discovered seeds buried in a piece of wood. When planted, these seeds sprouted, revealing a hidden vitality after being buried for over 3,000 years. Could it be that our human living conditions are so bleak, so prone to failure that we, not recognizing our own potential, resign ourselves to live in silent despair and defeat? Or do we also possess seeds of capability, a strong urge to rise that can break through even the toughest circumstances? Consider a story widely shared by the Associated Press on May 23, 1984. As a little girl, Mary Grota couldn't read or write. Experts thought she had a developmental delay. As a teenager, she was labeled incorrigible and spent 2 years in a correctional facility. Surprisingly, it was here that Mary began to study, dedicating 16 hours a day to learning. Her hard work paid off with a high school diploma. However, misfortune continued to follow Mary. After leaving the correctional facility, she became pregnant and received no support. 2 years later, another pregnancy led to a stroke, robbing her of her hard-earned reading and writing abilities. With her father's help and support, Mary fought back against her illness and reclaimed what she had lost. Despite financial difficulties, Mary pushed through. To escape a dead-end situation, she took in 7 children at once. Around the same time, she started studying at a community college. After completing her course, she applied and was accepted into Albany Medical College. In the spring of 1984 in Oregon, Mary Grota Lewis, now married, walked on stage in her graduation robe to receive her diploma. No one knew what was on her mind as she took the diploma, a symbol of her self-confidence and perseverance. The diploma told the world that here, on a tiny spot on Earth, was someone who dared to dream an impossible dream, a person who proved to all of us the incredible things humans are capable of. Standing tall and proud was Mary Grota Lewis, Maryland, a testament to the power of nurturing and pursuing dreams, for they are the driving force behind life's greatest achievements. 50. Dad and son. When Mark was 5 years old, his parents got divorced. He lived with his mom while his dad joined the military. As Mark grew older, he occasionally thought about the times he spent with his dad every day. Through his teenage years, thoughts of his dad gradually faded. Mark started dating, getting busy with life's many tasks. After graduating from college, Mark got married. A year later, his wife gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Life went on smoothly. Then when Mark's son turned 5 and saw Mark shaving, the little boy looked at him and laughed. "Dad, you putting cream on your face, you look so funny." Mark laughed, looked in the mirror, and suddenly remembered a story about his own dad from the past, where he had said something similar to his dad, just like his son had to him. This made him think more about his dad, and he asked his mom about him. His mom couldn't quite remember much because it had been a long time since Mark was 8. Mark looked deeply into his mom's eyes and said, "I need to find Dad, Mom." She suggested, "Maybe try contacting the U.S. Embassy in the UK. They might be able to help." It seemed like a long shot, but Mark was determined to find his dad. He called the embassy the following days, making his request known. After a lot of anxious waiting and consoling words from an embassy staff, "Mark, please don't be sad," he finally got a bit of hope. "Mark, we're happy to inform you that your dad once came to the UK to visit someone but never met them, and he has been living alone all this time. The information we have is 9 years old. We'll check and try to find an address for you." A few days later, Mark received a call from his dad. He was overjoyed. The good news had finally come. His waiting wasn't in vain. His dad explained that he had been traveling every 6 months trying to find him. He had Mark's address, but when he went to inquire, the landlord said Mark and his wife had moved 2 weeks prior without leaving a new address. After a long time of searching, Mark and his dad reunited in a deeply emotional moment. Now they are a part of each other's lives, and nothing can replace the sacred bond they lost over the years. 51. Someone still loves you. On a rainy night, a man named Mark decided it was time to end his life. Over 50 years old, Mark had never been married, never experienced the joy of having children, or enjoyed a family vacation. Both his parents had passed away 7 years prior. He had a sister, but they had lost touch long ago. He worked a menial job that brought him little satisfaction. Soaked and feeling utterly miserable, he walked down the streets feeling as though no one cared whether he lived or died. That stormy night, I was sitting in my room, watching the rain hit the window. I was 6 years old, and my whole world revolved around my collection of Star Wars action figures. I was dreaming of the day I could afford to add Darth Vader to my collection. To help me save, my dad hired me to jog with him, and every day I added 50 cents towards my Darth Vader fund. Hearing the doorbell, I jumped from my seat and rushed to the top of the stairs. My mom was already at the door. Opening it, she found a man looking utterly distraught, tears streaming down his face. My mom, feeling sorry for this stranger, invited him in, and he sat down with my parents in the living room. Curious, I sneaked down the stairs to get a better look. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the size of the weary man, his hands cradling his head as he wept, made my heart tighten. I ran back to my room, reached into my piggy bank, and grabbed the 50-cent coin with Kennedy's face that I had earned that day. I dashed back downstairs. At the living room door, I walked in. The adults looked surprised as I approached the stranger. I placed the 50-cent coin in his hand, insisting he take it, then hugged him before running out and back upstairs. I felt confused but incredibly happy. Downstairs, Mark sat silently, tears rolling down his face as he clutched the coin. Eventually, he looked up at my parents and said, "I thought no one cared about me anymore. I've been so lonely for 20 years. This is the first hug I've received in so long. I can't even remember the last time. It's hard to believe someone still thinks of me." Mark's life changed that night. When he left our home, he was ready to live instead of die. Though we never saw Mark again, we occasionally received letters from him, letting us know he was doing well. At 6, I didn't think much about what I did that night. It was just my response to hearing someone in pain. During our jogs, my dad and I would often talk about the importance of giving, but it wasn't until that moment that I truly understood its meaning. My life changed too, because I witnessed the healing power of giving, even if it was just a 50-cent gift. Before Mark left, my parents asked why he had knocked on our door. He said that as he walked the streets that rainy night ready to give up, he noticed a bumper sticker on a car. Standing by the parked car, he wondered about the people living in the house in front of which it was parked. Then, overwhelmed by despair, he approached our door. It's hard to imagine how a sticker and 50 cents could change 2 lives, but it did. The sticker on our car read, "Someone still loves you." 52. Light in the lonely night, a journey of enlightenment and compassion. In the midst of a deep, deserted road shrouded in silence and darkness, without a single home in sight and scarcely traveled by anyone, there was a small temple. This temple was newly built, only 3 years old. Inside, there was just one old monk, living in solitude, hardly ever visited by anyone. In front of the temple, in the middle of the courtyard, there was a neatly stacked, towering pile of firewood, arranged with care as if it were a prized garden maintained by an elderly gardener. One evening, after the monk had just lit a lamp, 2 travelers arrived at the doorstep and respectfully said, "Reverend, it was your light that guided us here. We hope to seek shelter for the night and will continue our journey in the morning." The monk, with a peaceful gesture, responded, "Buddha bless you. The door of meditation is always open to those who find themselves here." He paused for a moment, as if to calm the joy bubbling inside him, and then said, "For almost 3 years no one has visited this temple. Today is a day of fulfillment, as you 2 have stumbled upon this place to rest. It must be fate." After this, the monk prepared a simple vegetarian meal for his guests, and their conversation naturally led to a question from the visitors. "Reverend, may we know which scripture you favor for recitation?" Delighted to find kindred spirits, the monk replied, "I've been devoted to the teachings of Buddha since childhood, and I've visited many places of meditation. For the past 3 years, I've been enlightened, and since then, I recite only the Maitreya Sutra." One of the travelers inquired, "Could you share why you chose this particular scripture?" With reverence, the monk explained, "Buddha taught that 2,500 years after his enlightenment, the teachings would reach a critical point, marking the end of an era. Maitreya would then descend to save sentient beings and restore the teachings. That time is nearly upon us. I believe Maitreya is already saving those who sincerely practice. Hence, I vowed to recite the Maitreya Sutra 1,000 times. If my prayer is granted, it will be my enlightenment." The second traveler asked, "How many times have you recited it so far?" "I am at 999 times. Tonight I will recite it for the 1,000th time. Perhaps your auspicious presence tonight is to witness this moment." After the meal, the weary travelers requested to rest. The monk cleaned the temple to purify the space, then approached the Buddha statue, lit the oil lamp, and began to recite the scripture. The slow chant filled the air, punctuated occasionally by the ringing of a bell, marking the rhythm of a long drum roll. Before falling asleep, the travelers shared a thought. Poor old monk, so blindly faithful and lacking in insight, not achieving true enlightenment. Buddha's teachings, established 2,500 years ago, cannot avoid becoming outdated. Recognizing this, disciples must adapt and evolve the teachings, leading to new ideas and sects. This division is the natural origin of differences. "I agree," the other added, "and think that if Maitreya were to come now, he would have the task of updating Buddha's teachings to align with the evolution of the past 2 millennia. Every follower's duty is to prepare themselves for the new teachings. Simply clinging to rituals without understanding Buddha's intentions surely misses the point." Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was overheard by a lizard that had made the temple its home since it was built and had listened to 999 recitations, gaining a certain awareness. The traveler's critique enlightened the lizard. Knowing the monk's wish to self-immolate upon completing the 1,000th recitation, the lizard thought, "The monk is still blinded by faith, not yet enlightened. How can he achieve nirvana through self-immolation? I must find a way to prevent this, at least until he is truly enlightened." Determined to stop the monk from completing the final recitation, the lizard devised a plan to climb onto the Buddha's altar, reach the oil lamp, and drink all the oil. This would extinguish the flame, preventing the monk from reading the scripture. Miraculously, the lizard managed to drain the oil in one go, halting the recitation midway. The lamp went out, leaving the monk puzzled, but he thought, "The lay visitors must not be destined to witness my enlightenment." He decided to postpone the final recitation until after their departure. However, each subsequent night, the lamp would extinguish before the recitation could be completed. The monk considered reciting during the day, but remembered his vow to recite in the serene silence of night, and thus did not change his plan. One night, unable to contain his frustration and constantly checking the oil lamp, the monk saw the lizard drinking the oil. Angered, he stopped his chanting and exclaimed, "Evil creature! So, you've been thwarting my path to enlightenment." In a fit of rage, he struck the lizard on the head with his wooden mallet, killing it instantly. That day, he completed the final recitation, ascended the pyre, and set himself ablaze. That same night, the souls of both the monk and the lizard appeared before Buddha's lotus throne. In a solemn voice, Buddha addressed the monk. "You have followed the path of Zen since childhood, yet you failed to grasp the core lesson of my teachings. To achieve enlightenment, one must eliminate all desires, yet your desire for enlightenment itself is a form of craving. This craving led to anger towards the lizard, which is aversion, and your belief that eliminating the lizard would allow you to complete your recitations and achieve enlightenment is ignorance. These three poisons, craving, aversion, and ignorance, led you to commit the act of killing, and no amount of vegetarianism can compensate for this. Your transgression is grave. You must diligently practice to atone. I command Vajrapani and the Arhats to collect the ashes from your pyre and scatter them across the heavens. Each ash particle will reincarnate as a human being. Only when each of these beings achieves enlightenment and all sentient beings are reunited into one will you attain true enlightenment." Buddha then turned to the lizard's soul. The monk, not yet enlightened, committed a grave mistake, but his fault is singular. Yours, however, is tenfold for having attained partial enlightenment and still committing a fault. The lizard, kneeling, pleaded, "Great Buddha, I only wish to save the monk, even at the cost of my own life. What sin have I committed?" Buddha replied, "In your desire to save him, you interfered with his practice. Although misguided, his recitation was a form of faith. The realm of Buddha is one of freedom. By infringing on his freedom of belief, you obstructed his path to liberation. Since you did not use a method of freedom, and he lost his freedom, neither of you could enter the realm of liberation." Enlightened once more, the lizard begged for mercy. "Please, Buddha, grant me another life to freely guide countless beings, using the ashes spread by Vajrapani and the Arhats." Buddha consented. "Your wish is granted." As the lizard's soul was about to reincarnate, it asked, "Great Buddha, what form should I take in my next life?" Buddha replied, "You are close to enlightenment. Choose your own form to reincarnate. Only through freedom of choice can you refine yourself and enter the realm of liberation." The lizard's soul then drifted with the wind, uncertain of where to anchor itself to freely guide others while reaching a multitude as vast as the ashes from the pyre. Never before had a soul faced such a daunting challenge. One day, wandering aimlessly, The lizard's soul encountered one of the travelers from that fateful night, whose unintended advice had led to years of torment. The lizard hastily greeted him and shared its pain. "You helped me attain some enlightenment, but now I bear this indefinite karma. Since you've already aided me, please guide me to salvation." The travelers responded, "We are mere scholars, delighting in words and ideas, seeking joy in enlightening others. Our enlightenment comes from sharing beauty and wisdom. Our advice is to present your thoughts eloquently and freely. Succeed and be happy, fail and let be, but never encroach on others' freedom." A spark of inspiration ignited in the lizard's soul. The second traveler added, "Among us, some have captivated millions with a single story or poem. If you wish to enlighten countless beings, refine your art so your words can move millions. Let your words kindle a divine spark in each heart, and your wisdom will fuel their enlightenment." The lizard's soul bowed thrice in gratitude and resolved, "Though challenging, this path aligns with my goal. I will strive to reach Buddha's throne." This tale embodies the essence of enlightenment, compassion, and the complex interplay of fate, choices, and the pursuit of spiritual liberation. 53. The sadness of death. In heaven's imperial court, which meets every 100 years, there was a sense of unease and fatigue this time around. Tai Bai Jinxing was now old and weak, his reports to the Jade Emperor becoming muddled and forgetful, prompting the Emperor's patience and understanding. Nam Tao and Bac Dao were thin and frail, their foreheads wrinkled with the stress of earthly affairs. The Holy Mother of Mount Li was seemingly youthful thanks to the Peach Garden and her beauty regimen. Thunder Deity, still strong, found his authority diminished since humans invented lightning rods, catching only the odd, unfortunate soul caught in storms. Furthermore, his authority was undercut by the recent appointment of the Tornado God to show off heavenly power on Earth. The Dragon King, being a dragon, didn't seem to age, but his temperamental weather control led to endless complaints of floods and droughts to the heavenly court. The heavenly soldiers and generals had little to report. After the great uproar caused by Sun Wukong, heaven had been quiet, leaving them to idle away their time with drink and games, their readiness slipping. After all had reported in, a figure stepped forward, kneeling in the dragon courtyard. This figure was gaunt, with hollow eyes and cloaked in a tattered black robe, looking very much like a walking skeleton. He held a scythe, worn thin from use. Surprised at his appearance, the Jade Emperor asked, "Who are you?" Through tears of misery, the figure replied, "Your Majesty, I am Death." "Death, is it? It's only been 100 years, and I scarcely recognize you. Why do you look so worn?" the Emperor inquired. Death, somewhat comforted but still overwhelmed with emotion, explained his plight. He described himself as the most miserable being in the universe, overwhelmed by the booming populations of China, India, and Vietnam, among others. The world's population had skyrocketed, and with more births came more deaths, all of which required his personal attention. Death lamented his never-ending duty, which allowed him no rest or respite, leading to his haggard appearance. Moved by Death's lament, the Jade Emperor asked what could be done to help. Death boldly requested an upgrade for his department to better manage the workload, suggesting the recruitment of assistants and staff. After a moment's thought, the Emperor agreed to elevate Death's office and provide him with the necessary support. However, Death raised a more troubling issue. Humans had taken control of life and death themselves, through nuclear weapons and mass-killing devices. This, he argued, made the concept of death no longer a divine prerogative but a human one. He also highlighted the issue of abortion, now made easier by pills, further complicating his role and diminishing heavenly authority. Angered by these revelations, the emperor was ready to punish death for insolence, but the intervention of Taishang Laojun, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, and discussions of earthly irreverences, such as disrespectful songs and the rising power of women in America causing social upheaval, calmed him. Understanding the complex challenges faced by death and the shifts in divine authority, the emperor, albeit reluctantly, acknowledged the changing nature of heaven and earth. He recognized that even divine authority has its limits in the face of human actions and the laws of change. In a final act of empathy, the emperor decided to let death speak one last time before returning to his earthly duties. Death expressed a desire for retirement, a break from his eternal responsibilities. However, the emperor declared this impossible, as death is integral to the cycle of life, and without it, the world would descend into chaos. As the court session ended and the celestial beings departed, Death stood alone, reflecting on his solitary existence, mirroring the eternal solitude of Chang'e.
Hey everyone, your comments truly matter, offering insights and motivation to others and uplifting our creative team at Lighthouse of Wisdom channel. Sharing your thoughts and experiences enriches our community. So, let's get the conversation started below and help illuminate our path with your wisdom.